Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric and a continuing series, the Unported playlist, where I take a look at some of my favorite unported arcade games of all time. Today we're going to be playing Rave Racer by Namco. And I know what you're thinking, wasn't this game ported? And weirdly, it was not. Some of the tracks were remade in later editions of the game, but Rave Racer, the third game in the Ridge Racer franchise, never actually left arcades, which is a huge bummer, because this is really one of the best versions of the game in my opinion. Before you get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, and that notification bell definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But if you've played any of the Ridge Racer games, Rave Racer is immediately going to feel familiar to you, including the fact that for some reason your opponent cars always accelerate crazily away from the starting line and you end up getting left in the back. But if you've ever played any of the games in the series, the steering, the mechanics, the controls, everything is going to feel exactly like you expect it to. Except weirdly, every once in a while my car just completely squirts out from behind me and bumps into a wall. I'm not sure if that's an emulation issue or if that was in the original game, but this is exactly what you want when you're playing an arcade racing game that isn't just pure arcade with gigantic jumps, something like San Francisco Rush. And of course, like every Ridge Racer game ever, it is quite short. There's only 4 courses, and a lot of them are going to be retreads using some of the same area from previous courses as well. But what's great about Rave Racer and the Ridge Racer franchise in general is it's got some of the best drifting mechanics in an arcade game, minus the fact that I keep hitting that damn wall and I'm just not playing well today. But when you're on in this game, when you learn a course, sliding around those corners feels second nature. I love how the camera kind of swings out as well to give you a better view of the action going on. Namco always made a great racing game, and it's a little bit of a bummer that Ridge Racer isn't as big of a franchise as it used to be, because in the 90s, if you're going to play an arcade racing game and you weren't playing San Francisco Rush, chances are you were going to be playing Rave Racer, Ridge Racer Type 4, or any of the numerous games that Namco made in the franchise. And I absolutely love the arcade version here as well. The graphics are clearly like PlayStation 1 times 2. You know, when we got the Ridge Racer games at home from the arcades, they played really well and looked great. But if you put them side by side to the arcade version, you can definitely tell the PlayStation 1 wasn't fully up to the task of portraying the graphics in their native resolution and quality from the arcade. So I've always loved Namco's arcade boards because even if they weren't always using Sony hardware, it always felt like what the PlayStation 2 may be had it come out 3 years earlier. And you will see here that I'm going to run out of time very shortly, and that's one of my biggest complaints about Rage Racer and Ridge Racer, the games in the arcades, is that I feel like no matter how well you drive, you're always fighting against the clock, and you may end up running out of time knowing it's going to happen, but you still have about 10 to 20 seconds to try to pull it off. But I mean, they're really fun games, and I love arcade racing games, and how can I not talk about Rave Racer on a series about great arcade games that never came home? And you'll see here now that I am drifting better, everything is coming a little bit more alive. Even though, like I said, I ran out of time, and that is the big bummer. But I've always loved the soundtrack and the sound effects as well. You get these real techno beats, so go ahead and listen for about a minute or so because the soundtrack is great, and I'll come back and tell you more about why. If you never played Rave Racer, you should probably go do it right after the video. But enjoy. Not sure what's going on with the camera there when it swings outside of the wall. It's been so long since I played Rave Racer in arcades, I can't remember if that was part of the original game or if that's an emulation issue. It really doesn't affect things whatsoever, but it is an interesting observation. But I will say the soundtrack is absolutely outstanding. Ridge Racer and Rave Racer always had great, upbeat techno music, and Rave Racer is no different. You get a ton of really interesting stuff in there. And I remember the original PlayStation 1 version loaded the entire game into RAM at the start, so you could pop open the lid of the PlayStation 1 and put whatever music CD you wanted in there, and you could make some hilarious soundtracks. But you'll see again, I just ran out of time, and that's my problem with this game, and I turned it down so that I had more time, and I still was having issues actually completing the courses in the time allotted. And I don't think that's just a Rave Racer issue. I feel like that's most arcade racing games. The timing was so tight that it basically wanted you to pump more credits into the machine to be able to continue to race, and Rave Racer is no different. But I love all the graphics of this. Going through the cityscape, we have that little game of Dig Dug above on the monitor. Everything looks amazing, and I absolutely love these graphics. They have that PlayStation 1 vibe, except just being nicer, and I loved this entire generation of graphics in arcades because it just felt like something we were going to be getting soon. And obviously the PlayStation 2 blew the doors off what this was doing, so did the Dreamcast, but I kind of felt like this is what we were going to be seeing at home had the PlayStation 1 left the market earlier. So it's a really interesting period of time when 3D games were becoming the norm and you were seeing increased resolutions and increased graphical fidelity in your arcade games, because you knew soon you would be playing these sort of things in your living room. And I love the first person view in Rave Racer as well. The sense of speed that this game gives you is awesome. It's running at a full 60 frames a second. Everything is running smoothly. It emulates perfectly. And when you're going through the first person camera, drifting around the corners, everything just feels great. And I will say that it's relatively easier to drift in first person. It feels like the back end of the car just isn't there, and I'm really not sure. Maybe the game's code actually allows you a little bit more leeway in first person mode than if you're playing in the third person view with seeing your car. I feel like that's what's going on, but I just could be totally wrong. It really is hard to say. But again, like I said, the music's great in this game, and I want you to listen to a little bit more of it. So once I run out of time on this course again, I'll give you about a minute's worth of additional music, because you just got to hear how good the songs in this game are. But enjoy it again.
Game over, man. 3, 2, 1, go!
I just love that you can totally 100% jump that corner in your car. And when you get to the harder stage, you're definitely going to be catching a little bit more air, but it just feels great. It's not as gigantic of jumps as something like San Francisco Rush, which is one of my favorite just wacky arcade racing games of all time, but Rave Racer gives you enough of that to make it feel like a real solid arcade experience. And when you get into the mountain stage, you really need to get really good at drifting quickly, because if you start touching the walls too much, you have absolutely no chance whatsoever. Honestly, if you bump 3 or 4 walls in your first lap, you're almost guaranteed not to be able to finish the race because of that timing restriction. But this is definitely an awesome game, and I feel like it's one that not many people have played, because honestly I haven't seen a Rave Racer cabinet in arcades for a long time, and obviously this never getting ported over. A lot of people are way more familiar with Ridge Racer. But if you have any questions or comments, I'll leave them down below. Love chatting with you guys. I'll be back next Sunday with another episode in the Unported playlist. Do me a huge favor, hit like and subscribe, and I'll jump that corner and see you guys next time. Bye bye.